You know that one meme where your parents all of a sudden like drop some hidden elite ball knowledge about their lives? Like how their lives were before they like had children or something along those lines? Yeah, this is one of those videos, so like just strap yourselves in. Um this is basically, the story of how my mom and father met. Or what I'd like to call a story of the school's flower and a delinquent. Hello there, and welcome back yet again to another video. It's Hero here, and today's video is actually going to be a little different. I decided to shine the spotlight on my parents today, and basically the story of how they met and what they were like and all that stuff, all the kind of stuff. I'm sure that most of us can say that we all love our parents, right? For better or for worse. But one thing I feel that's rather prominent within every single generation is that until we get older, or never in general, we never truly know about the lives of our parents before they had us. What sort of life did they lead? Were they steadfast into their careers? Were they someone before they decided to settle down? What sort of elite ball lore or side quests did they delve into before having children? Well, I was fortunate enough to kind of just reach that part of my life rather early, in my early teens actually. I believe it was around then when it was like the first time I actually sort of had a genuine conversation with my mom and dad about just who they were before having my sister and I. For some background information, both my mom and father grew up in the same village. Yep, that's right. I got country blood bumpkin with me, you know. So from here on out, I'm gonna be speaking with a hick accent. I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna be speaking in a hick accent. But yeah, moving on. They both hailed from poor families within their own home villages and stuff. It was quite common back then for Malaysians. They were born in the 1970s, and Malaysia had only gained independence from the British in 1957, to put things in perspective. They were essentially one of the first generations to actually live in a Malaysia that was basically doing their own thing and not under colonial rule, but I digress. You're here to hear about how they met. The supposed flower getting together with a delinquent. Coincidentally, my mother's name is Lily, actually, so the flower thing really does fit here. Alright, so my mother, just some background information. My mother has 8 siblings, six sisters and 2 brothers. And according to anecdotal evidence from all of them, she was supposedly considered the prettiest by relatives, friends, schoolmates alike, etc. By all of them. That's not to say that my aunts or even uncles were slouches, not at all. But I guess my mother was on a different tier compared to the rest. I'm unsure. Sounds like hyperbole, but whatever. What supposedly isn't, though, is how, and I'm not even joking when I say this, where how dudes of all ages were like, supposedly really down bad for her. I don't know, man. Like, shit was different back then. Like, it was only her first year in secondary school, aka high school, and dudes basically in all of the years were already pining for her, apparently. I was told that they would, like, literally scream out her name from their class, like on multiple floors when she was walking in the hallways, for example. Like, again, this is starting to sound like some anime type like, or K-drama sort of stuff, but apparently this was true. And I guess it's more believable considering that this was in a village setting. And of course, because this was in the 70s and we don't have as much access as we do to different types of people. So whoever that was around was just who you got. And I guess my mom just so happened to hit the lottery genetics wise. I'm unsure, and unless I literally contact every single person from back then, I don't think we would ever get the truth. But from what I've heard, that's just how popular she was back then. And of course, eventually, they would give her the title of the school's flower. Or in Chinese / Mandarin, they called her Xiaohua. Xiaohua, or something like that. Now then, back then, it was commonplace for students to just walk their way back home, and of course, my poor mother would have to quite often deal with guys trying to talk or get with her. They would like be like, "Hey, yo, what's up, girl? What you doing, huh?" And she recalls like that there were even times where guys would drive their motorcycles alongside her, like as she was walking, like nearly all the way to her home, but would of course stop briefly from her house because of my grandpa. Because he would like, I'm pretty sure my grandpa would have threw hands if he ever saw those dudes, man. Like Jesus Christ. They wouldn't do anything wrong to her or anything like that. They just would just tail her, and according to my mother, she would have to like pretend to not notice them and be like, I don't know, man. I don't even know how to describe it. She would just like not know, like I'd be like, I pay no mind to you fools, that sort of thing. But quite literally, the guys would oftentimes like find reasons to look at her, whether it be her changing classes, for example, or being in PE class. Yeah, that shit would not fly modern day. But it was considered normal back then. So I don't know. It was like another case of like boys will be boys, that sort of thing, which is something I don't agree with. Of course, bad behavior is bad behavior, right? Let's not normalize that shit. But that's just how things were back then. Now, this isn't to say that everything was sunshine and rainbows for her, all right? Life is still just that, life. There would most certainly be people that were jealous of the attention that my mother was getting, and, they would spread rumors, try to bash on her and such, but surprisingly, it didn't happen as often as one would think, according to her knowledge at least, but that's not to say it wasn't a thing. And of course, it didn't help that, well, the family was dirt poor. A lot of families were back then, especially in rural areas in Malaysia. They were mostly self-sufficient, actually. A lot of families were in the village. Growing your own crops, herding chickens, planting your own fruits, all that jazz. Now, enter my father. He himself was smitten by my dear mama. All right, peep the backstory on this feller. So, like, he was a year older than my mom. And if I'm being honest, even now, he is, like, quite a complete opposite to what my mom is. I'm sorry, Dad, but I have no idea what she saw in you. Oh God, I'm sorry, Dad, but back before I called him Dad, he was just Andy. Well, at least that's his English name. He wasn't well known or had the prestigious title, quote unquote prestigious title my mother had back then when he was in school. And he most certainly wasn't a model student. His friends had gotten him into smoking at the age of 13, and like skipping class was very common routine for them. Like they do whatever the hell, I don't know. I don't recall too much because my dad, he doesn't share too much about his life back then, but like they would get into all sorts of shit, troublemaking, maybe the occasional fight, or I don't know. But believe it or not, that's just how it was for people back then too, again, especially in, again, rural areas, considering the lack of emphasis on education back then. He didn't even graduate high school or secondary. He just simply opted to work odd jobs until he was then hired by his uncle to work alongside him as an interior designer. Yeah, you didn't think it was gonna go there, did you? Yeah, but my dad worked as an interior designer for quite a time before COVID hit, and but that's a different story for a different time. This in his job as an interior designer is where he would eventually work his way into becoming his own boss and also starting a company with his own brother. My uncle, so to speak. I will say one thing though, that man, like my dad, had a lot of patience and perseverance. Because he chased after my mom for like 7 or 8 years, man. Like, before she finally gave him like a chance. Bro, in today's cultural climate, I'd be impressed if someone would go 8 months pursuing someone. But 8 years? Sheesh, Dad. I know you were filled with like Undertale style determination. You know what I mean? Like, he was filled with utter determination. Like what the heck? I know, bro. I know. But all right, whatever, Dad. He had his eye on the prize. That sort of shit. I don't fucking know. In the beginning, my mom found him to be just like the other guys, someone that she could just write off as another dude, But the years went by. He kept pursuing, kept taking her and her friends out to places, for example, kept doing his best to make it so that he would be a suitable candidate, quote unquote, to be the lover of the school's flower. She eventually softened up to him and, of course, finally gave him a chance, obviously, because I'm here. And yeah, the rest is really just sort of history. They then got married a couple years later, moved out of the village, and headed to my country's capital, Kuala Lumpur. And when I say they work their asses off, they work their asses off. Like my mom, dad, their relatives, you know, their brothers and sisters, all of them are like the generation, salt of the earth sort of generation where they just really, really put in that hard work to just give my generation, Gen Z, essentially, the things that we have right now. And I'm, of course, very much thankful for what they have done. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. It's like they built a life together, you know, alongside their relatives and such, and eventually had my sister and me. The school flower, quote unquote, and the delinquent is the name of the story. I'm gonna be real, man. Life truly can be like a soap opera or K drama sometimes. It's weird. Looking back now, it's wild to think about. Yeah, I guess. All those years, I just saw them as mom and dad, or like the people who told me to study harder, eat my veggies, stop spending so much time on them games, bro. I had no idea mom was basically the village celebrity, like walking around like the main character of some Malaysian drama or something like that. Or that dad was out here pulling a 7 year slow burn romance anime arc shit, you know? Like he got more determination. He put in more years into chasing someone than people do for a gym membership, dog. Like what the fuck? It's exactly that meme. Like parents who just casually drop elite tier lore bombs and then go back to asking if you eaten dinner yet or something like that. I feel lucky I got to hear their story early though. Most people don't get that until way later or never at all. So yeah, that's kind of like a really simplified version of origin story of how the flower met the delinquent and became my parents. Moral of the story, I don't know. Perhaps that life is unpredictable and weird sometimes, and maybe for all the right and wrong reasons. If you got your own like parent lore drop moments or like some hidden backstory about how your mom and dad that met or like something that completely changed how you saw them, drop it in the comments. I would love to read what all of you have to say. I absolutely love hearing people's stories and just, you know, relating and resonating. If you enjoyed this little detour into family history, this is certainly different from my usual stories of literal criminals and cheating scandals and stuff like that, or controversies about an LLM. It's definitely different, but if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, you know, typical stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to make it to at least 1K by July, I guess. I don't know. I'm just trying to hit that mark, you know. And hit the bell so you don't miss the next video. Who knows? Maybe I'll drag my parents on camera one day and ask them to tell the story themselves. You'll never know. But until then, thanks for watching. Peace. Oh yeah, and here's a picture of my mom and dad together. In case, you know, in case if you didn't believe me.